Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Bava Metzia daf Zayin. We're going to begin on Zayin Amud Aleph, about 18 lines from the top. Tani Rav Tachlifa bar Marava. So he learned Kamei in front of the Ravavo. Shnai Maduka Metalis. They have two people that are holding onto a talis. Zen Noitel ad Makam Shiada Magas. This one will take up until where his hand is, and the other one will also only take up until where his hand is. Bishar cholkin, and the rest is going to be divided. Bishava equally. So machvil Ravavo uvishvua. Ravavo pointed out that it's necessary. He went like this: klapimala. You have to make a shvua as well. So the question is, that's not what our Mishnah said. It says you split it up 50-50. Our Mishnah says you just divide it in half. You split the talus right down the middle. So what does this mean until your hand reaches? So my Papa, we're talking about the tefisi berkarkashta. We're talking about a situation where they're holding on to, as Rashi says, bigradin, Shimishne Roshan, just onto the fringes. So if they're just holding onto the fringes, they're not really holding onto the talus itself. So they're not really holding onto the talus, they're holding onto the fringes. And therefore that's why it's split up. So we can derive from here the fact that it says that you get until your hand ad makam shedamagas is a kinyan. So high sudra, when it comes to a kerchief, in which is a kinyan called a kinyan sudr or chalipin, kivan de tafas be sholosh, as long as you're holding on to even just 3 by 3, that already Korean Bay will read the pasuk v'nasan l're'ehu, the command the pasuk dami v'kani. It's considered already that a kinyan took place, but it has to be at least 3. Why 3 etzbois, 3 fingers? Because it says in Rus, nala yuvatzer mishalosh etzbois la begedhu. Less than 3 fingers is not a beged, as we find regarding the dinim of Tumah. Okay, so my Shna mit Rav Chisda. So the question is, why is this different than the din of Rav Chisda? The Yomi Rav Chisda, he said that get biyada, if you have a get in her hands, it was given, he gave it to her, umashicha biyadai, but there's a thread in his hands. If he could pull it like a yo-yo back to him, so it's not a good get. But why? We obviously see the fact that she's holding on to it. Rashi says, it's not considered like she has it. But I thought we said once you're holding on to it, that's good enough. So Aaron says, Hasam creases being in Valeka. Hachan Sina beika be'inan va'ika. So isn't a nesina, it's a nesina. However, there has to be a krisus. There's a complete havdalah separating you and the wife, and as long as you're holding on to it on some level, that is not a krisus. That's the reason why it's not a get. If you can grab it back. Omerabba. Im talis muzu heves. What if you have a talis, Rashi says, even if it's made out of gold, cholkin, even then you'll divide it in half. So pshita, like, why would you make a distinction? What's the difference what it's made out of? Lotzricha dekoi dahava be mitzi. Then you have some gold in the middle. Hanami pshita, so it's still obvious, you split in the middle. Lotzricha demikarba gabi dechad. The gold is closer to the other one person than the next. No one is actually holding on to the gold, but it's closer than the other person. So Madatema, dear Malay, Paul Hachi, divide it this way. Kamash one, dear Malay, Maichos is the Paul Hachi, Paul Hachi. Why do you want to divide it that way? In the length, divide it this way, in the width, or the other way around. So therefore, because of that, it would still be split up. Even if it's closer to someone, that doesn't make any difference. Okay, Tanoban. So now you have 2 people now holding onto a document, a star. And Malva Oimer, the lender says, Shalihu, I have it, Vanaful Mimeni, it fell from me, a Matzatziv, and I found it, which basically what the lender is saying is, the way it is, the lender holds onto the star, and when the borrower pays up the loan, the Malva gives back the loan, the document to the Lova. So now the Malva is saying, it's mine, and therefore this guy owes me money. Shulchahu, which doesn't sound very logical. So on the Gersa on the side it says Shalihu, it's really mine. Uparati and I paid you back already. I already paid you. And therefore you return this star to me, and it fell from me. So din is iskayim star b'chaysam of divrei Rabbi. So Rabbi says you should verify the document, and then it would be repaid. It says Rashi in the Havamina, imashtar kosher, shis kaimuhu chaysmav. You can verify the signatures. Loimer ksav yadenu. Someone can verify these are his signatures. Then harihu beches kasai. So we say it's in that person's chazaka, and therefore it's considered a valid star, and therefore he has to pay back the loan again, or maybe the first time. That's words of Rebbe. No, yachloku. Divide it. So if you owe $100, so then it's just $50. Nafal yad hadayan. What happens if it fell from the hand of the judge? Lo yotzei alamas. So we say that it will not leave ever from the judge. What does that mean? Says Rashi, mashma the haki kaimer im matzu dayan. If the judge finds it, lo yotzei oisel lamas miyad dayan. It should not leave the dayan. In other words, if the dayan is the one that finds this document that fell, so then he shouldn't get involved at all. So we're going to ask, Maishna dayan inshi de alma. What's the difference between the judge and anyone else? If anyone else finds a star and you don't know if it belongs to the malva or the lova, you should also not give it back to either party. So we'll get to that. Rav Yossi Omer harihu beches kasai. Rav Yossi says it's in its chazaka, which means it's cheskas kashrus. Omer Mar. So now let's understand these cases. Yiskayim ashtar b'chayisamav, that you should verify and certify the shtar with its signatures. So what does that mean? V'gavli mal v'kuli, and therefore the lender can collect it. The leisli masnish and shtar moichsin chulu. Understand, our Mishnah said that you divide things in a case of doubt, especially if they're both holding on to it. Shtar moichsin v'tal, shtar moichsin v'shtar. You should divide it. Why does the malva get his money? Amar Rav Nachman b'mekuyim divrei kol yachok. You're right. If we're dealing with a situation where it's certified, says Rashi Shikasabo Hinpik, Shiyatzik Farbe based, and you have a certification, Vehid Edim, Al Chasimas Yaldan, there's signatures, the witnesses verify it, Vekaisan Hadiyanim, Boy Shtaradanan, Nafik Kadmana, there's a document that says that the judges said that this document came in front of them, Vesidu Ploni Uploini, Al Chasimas Yadayu, and we have witnesses certifying that these are good signatures. So in that situation, everyone's going to say it should be split up. And not that not that he should collect all of it. All he's able to do is collect half. Okay, and that's it. So in the event where you can verify and certify this document, so then you will just split it up, okay, which is like what our Mishnah says. However, ki pligi, the argument is b'shein mekuyim, where it's not verified by the courts. Rabbi Savar, if you have admittance that the shtar was written, it needs to be verified, because who's the one who's verified? Who's the one who's saying that this is a good shtar? It's the lova, the borrower. So now the lova is saying I already paid you back. So it's like a piece of pottery. It's chasma be'alma. So therefore, according to him, since sarcha kaimo, v'imekayim le polig. I understand if you can be mekayim it, you split. The lo mekayim le, but if not, lo polig. You don't split it at all. You don't do nothing. So my time, chas b'yalmahu. Man kamishavli l'haishtara. Who's the one who said this is a valid document? Only the lova. Hakemer de paria. He said it's paid back. So according to the shita of Rabbi, when he says yiskayim hashtar b'chaismav, it means the only time we'll divide it is only if you're able to miskayim hashtar b'chaismav. But if you're not able to, then in that situation, the lova doesn't have to pay back anything, because of the din of moedim b'shtar shekas was sarcha kaimo, and since it wasn't certified, so therefore all you have is the lova's word. The lova is saying he paid it back. Fine. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel savar moed b'shtar shekasva ein tzarich l'kaimo. No, it doesn't have to be verified, and therefore v'afa gavdol makayim le yachloku. So everyone holds when the star is makoyim that the din is that you just say yachloku. The question is if we're dealing with a star which is not, then the question is, do you have to be makayim it? Right? Do you have to tzarich l'kaimo? So if you don't have to, so then it's a good star, and therefore you split it up. If not, then we say it's not a star because the only one we're listening to is the lova. So and therefore that situation, the lova is saying it's chasma mi'alma. So therefore in that situation, the lova doesn't have to pay anything. Let's look quickly before we move weiter to TB 2024. Omer Rava, im haisa talis mezu heves cholkin, my kamashman Rava b'hari pshita. Okay, before we turn the daf. So I wrote, im karav le'echad mehem v'rochok ksas le'echad liyad echad mehem shehu yochol litoin lama cholok es ha-beged kizeh cholok es ha-beged kizeh, which is pretty well written. TB 24. So let's get this. TB 24. So this was the case of, let's find it. Im hoisa talis mezuheves, cholkin, and demikarev l'gabi dechad. Okay, good. All right. Okay, let's go weiter. So that was, now we can understand that's the machlokas. Now what happens if nafal liyad dayan? Lo yoitzi olamas. So what we said, as we continue to Simon Bays, is that if the dayan finds it, so he doesn't disperse the money at all. So the question is, Maishna liyad dayan. What's the difference? It says Rashi Ishacher, which is the Rashi quoted the question before. What's the nafkamina? No one should have to give it to the lova or to the malva. Why would you think there's any difference between a judge and anyone else? So Maishna liyad dayan. So Merava Hakikar. This is how you read it. Acher shematz star shenafal. And after you found a star that fell, it once fell liyad dayan. The hechidami. What is this case? The kasev be henpik. That they wrote a document verifying this. Lo yoytze olamis. Then it should not go out anymore. V'lo meboy loy kasev be henpik. If there was no henpik written by the dayan, there's nothing to talk about. The ikal meimar kasev lilbois v'loiva. Maybe it was written for a loan, but the loan never took place. So therefore, certainly you shouldn't deal with this. El afil kasev be henpik. The Makuyim, even though you verify that this is a very well written star and everything, lo yachser cheshin lepiroyin. In this situation, even though there was definitely a loan, but the problem is maybe taka that it was paid off, and therefore maybe the lova already paid the loan, and therefore that's the reason why you can't give it back. So it doesn't matter, even if there was a henpeik, the din is the same. Rabbi Yossi disagrees and says, no, we're not chayish that it's paid back, because if we're dealing with a, says Rashi, demand hadri le star, parual alter, zahir be likara, v'loy mashile. It doesn't make sense. If you paid off a loan, and the malva gives you the lova money, you're not going to keep it. You're going to rip it up immediately. So therefore, we're going to assume that the loan was never paid, and we're not chayish lepiroyin. V'lo chayish Rav Yossi lepiroyin. Is that true that he's not chayish for piroyin? Is that really the case? Well, Sanya, matzah shtar ksuba b'shok. Let's say you find a star which is written a shtar ksuba, and it's in the marketplace. B'zman shabal moide. So the husband admits that he never gave her the ksuba, obviously yasal isha, give it back to the woman, because there's no argument here. What if the husband does not admit to that? So lo yasal lozeh, don't give it back to the husband or to the wife. Rav Yossi Omer, oide tachas bala, while they're married, yasal isha, then you should give it back to the woman, because she's not divorced. This armel nisgarshav, let's say that she was widowed or divorced, lo yaser lozeh. So then you should not give it. So we see here, we are chayish that the husband paid back the ksuba. So how could you tell me the Rav Yossi is not chayish l'pirayon? We see clearly by the ksubas isha that he is. So epoch, flip it around. Nafal yadayin lo yotzel lamis div Rav Yossi because he's chayish l'pirayon v'chalamim harihu b'cheskaso. Okay, yihaki kasha the rabbanon. So then, if that's the case, we have a kasha on the rabbanon. So now you're telling me the rabbanon are the ones that are not chayish l'pirayon, but we see here that they are. So shtar ksuba kul Rav Yossi. Actually, this entire case is of the ksuba is Rav Yossi. So there's no steer in the rabbanons. But this is how you're supposed to read it. Anabal moide, if the husband does not admit, then lo yasul is evil zeh. Then don't give it back to the husband or the wife. If she's divorced, because again we're chayish l'pirayon. However, if they're still married, you can give it back to her. Rav Yossi omer oida tachas ba'al yasul isha nisarmo niskarsha yasul zevul zeh. Okay, so that's one answer. Fine. Rav Papa omer lo'im lo tepoch. Don't flip it around. So the question is, Rav Yossi, I thought that you are, in fact, chayish l'pirayon. And that's the reason why we can't give it back to the woman, the ksuba. So Rav Yossi l'devareim de rabbanan karmelhu. He's explaining the sheet of the rabban. He's saying like this: L'didi, according to me, I feel in this armon niskarsha nami lo chayishin l'pirayon. I'm never chayish l'pirayon, and therefore you should always give it back. However, l'didchu, according to you, that you are sometimes chayish l'pirayon. So oideli miyas, at least admit to me, but oida tachas bayla di yasel isha. That while she's married, give it back to her. The Amro le Rabban say no. Amor Sarari Atvasa. Maybe it was a bundle of money she was typhus, says Rashi. What does that mean? My Sarurais Oksafim Masula Leyichud Ksubasa Kishanasna Ole Achmikain Shalot Yetrichuhu Yarshim Im Tis Almanin. So maybe she was already given the money in some bundle, and therefore she actually did receive her money to the ksuba, and there even now, right? Even while she's still married, so that when, let's say later on, if something happens, you can just collect it from there, and therefore maybe she already got this bundle of money, and therefore you shouldn't give her the ksuba back. Okay. Ravina Omer Olam Epoch Kamaisa. Really flip the original statements between the Rabbi Yossi and the Tanakama. The time the Rabbanan Hacham Mishum Dichayshinan L'Shtei Ksubos. He's concerned. The reason why we don't give this ksuba back to this woman is because we're concerned of two ksubos. Says Rashi. Olam Epoch Kamaisa. With the kashalach the Rabbanan, how do we understand is chayish l'pirayon? So he says it's not because you're chayish l'pirayon that it was maybe paid back. Demand para v'hader shtar alter karle. As we said, normally when it comes to a shtar, as soon as the lova pays it off, we're not chayish l'pirayon because he would have ripped it up right away. Maybe there's two documents. He wrote a second one, etc. So what may have happened is there was one document and then it got lost. You wrote a second one, and all of a sudden you found the first one. So that's what we're concerned of. That's the reason why we don't give the ksuba back to the woman. Rav Yossi he doesn't assume there's a possibility of two ksubas. Okay. All right. So that's a whole bunch of answers. Let's look at question 4. Matzah shtar ksuba b'shuk ein habal moide lo yasol zevel lo ish lo isha ma toyin habal. What is the husband claiming when it comes to this ksuba, right? One is obviously parati umiyadi nafal. He's saying that the ksuba fell from my hands, right? Because again, what happens is the reverse. She holds the ksuba, and then he gets the ksuba and pays it on when he pays her the money. So he said, you know what, I already paid her the amount for the ksuba, but then I lost it, and that's basically what happened. It fell out of my hands. Alternatively, al takziru isha, don't give it sheyesh biyada acheres, Maybe she has a second ksuba, but taitzi al yarshai shtar achar shtar. So basically, again, that maybe what he did was he wrote cheshinan l'shtei ksuvos. So that's a second possibility of what his claim is, that he had a second shtar because he lost the first ksuba and he gave that to her, and therefore that's what ended up happening over here. Okay. Omer Rav Elazar. Machloikis. The machlokis, when we said yachloku, is b'shneim adukin, b'toifus, or shneim b'toirif. If both parties are holding on to the toifus, or both parties are holding on to the toirif. The toifus is the standard text, and the toirif are the specific details of the loan, including the date. If each one is holding on to different parts of the document, says Rashi, the toirif, Gilui shel shtar makom haloiva malva mois vazman, like all the details, and toifus shtar kol lashon hashtar, it's like the standard text. So zen noitel toifus, zen noitel toirif. If you're one's holding on to toirif, one's holding on to the toifus, so each one holds on to takes each part. It's always divided up. If you echad adak b'toifus, v'echad adak b'toirif, doesn't matter. V'sanyim. We learned zen noitel ad makom shel megas. You should reach only what you're holding on to. So lotzricha de koi toirif be mitzoi. We're talking about a situation where no one's holding on to either of them. Or it's in the middle, right? No one is holding on to the toirif. So yahachi ma'il memer. So what's the? Of course you're cholkin. Lotzricha de mikarev l'gabi echad. If let's say the toirif is closer to one of them, similar to the gold. Divide it this way. Divide it at length, or divide it to the width, etc. He said that each one gets different amounts of money. So understand, what are we dividing up over here? We're dividing up the piece of paper. So is it for a bottle stop to stick into a barrel? Or malay with demay? No, it means there's a monetary gain. It says Rashi, Malon bedamim kama tarif yafim in a typhus. The tarif has more value than the typhus, so therefore the one who's holding onto the tarif will get a little bit more. Why? Diamer hachi shtar di isbeizman kama shabi. We say how much is a shtar which has the time worth. The leisbeizman kama shabi. Mishtar di isbeizman gavim mushubadi. Because if it has a time, so you can collect from encumbered properties as a lien, because it has a date, and therefore you know when the land was it sold before or after this loan. The other one without a zman you can't collect. So therefore you have to give the difference. So whenever we say the word divide, it has to be we're talking about in money, not the thing itself. We rip the talis in half. You're causing a monetary loss. Halokash, as we continue to Chesed Aleph, it's still fit for a small kid. You're going to rip up a golden garment. It's a loss. So halokash dechazil v'nei malachim. It's good for little kings' kids, like little princes. Two people are riding an animal. So you're going to split the donkey in half? You're going to cause a loss. Now if it's a kosher animal, maybe you could shecht it. El Tameya, Havsadua, there's a monetary loss. I guess you can say, why don't you just give it to a Nevela? I'm not exactly sure what the question is. El Damei, Hachanam Ladamei. So we'll stop here. We're basically saying, no, it's Ladamei. Obviously, when we say Yachloka, it's only referring to the value. Okay. So that was question 4. Question 5 may be out of order. Shnaim adukim ishtar makuyim. If it's makuyim, malva omer shlihu benafel mimenu matzasiv. V'loiva omer shlihu parati mimenu nafel mahadin. So if shnei madukin b'taifis u'v'tayrif yachloku. Okay, I'm not really sure how that's why it has to say b'shtar makuyim. Okay, but it's going on what we're saying before. If you're holding on to the tayrif, if both of them are holding on to the taifas, or both of them are holding on to the tayrif, so then yachloku. If one's holding on to the taifas and one's holding on to the tayrif, it's actually a machlokes. If each one holds, he just says pasha echad b'taifas v'echad b'tayrif aduk b'tarif noitel yoser kafima sheshav yoser mishtar she'ein bozman v'shar cholkin. Really, I think it's a machlokes, right, based on what we just said, but this is how he frames it. So when we say machlokes is v'shishnehem adukin b'taifas shishnehem b'tayrif. Aval echad aduk b'taifas v'echad aduk b'tayrif zen noitel taifas zen noitel tayrif. Again, Rav Yochanan is chayach with that, but again, we say shtar the east beizman kamashava, the waist beizman kamashava, b'shtar the east beizman gavim mishabadi v'idach lo gavim mishabadi yoivle hech neveni veni. So that's what they're looking for. I think it really is a machlokus, but okay. TA 23. Echad aduk b'taifes v'echad b'tayrif zen noitel tayrif zen b'tayrif. Ma hamal shesh b'tayrif ve'ein b'taifes u'madu ein mal gam b'taifes mipnei chasimas edim. So b'tayrif yesh zman mashkein b'taifes. Ve'edim einu mal kivan shemayda sheksav ein sarech chasimas edim. So I'm not sure if that actually we covered yet, but we definitely did part of TA 23, so I'll just mark it as done. This is Zion Amud Beis. And TB Omar Rava im hoisa talis muzaheves. We did that. Madua in Raya mihamishna dahay echad roich v'echad manhig adkan.